I'm with Robert Boyd, CEO of Endurance Gold. The company symbol is EDG on the TSX Venture. And, Endurance is out with some really good news this morning, quite frankly. A hole at the Imperial Zone has made a new discovery of a new zone at depth, the lower Imperial Zone. So we have 7.18 grams per ton over 8.3 meters, including 28 grams per ton over 1.7 meters at this new discovery. Robert, how are you today?
I'm very good, Robert, and I hope your weather's performing well down there. But up here, we've had some rainy weather recently, and we're snowed out of our project, so we're now in the process of getting results in and bringing everybody up to date on those. And this hole in particular was a story unto itself. It was the deepest hole we've ever drilled on the project, collared. With a minus 80-degree dip to test the depth extension. Initially, the purpose of this was to step out about 185 meters down dip from our last good intersection in Imperial, which was prior to this one of our deepest intersections as it was. So this opened up the Imperial Zone for 185 meters down dip, but then we continued to push the hole at depth, and in total, we got about 8 different intersections over about a 300-meter width as we pushed down below the Imperial Zone. One of those intersections was the Imperial Zone itself, which we successfully intersected. And then about 200 meters vertically below the Imperial Zone, we've identified this new zone, which is a new lower Imperial discovery for the lack of imagination of putting another name on it. Um, and it's a pretty significant intersection. It's a diorite hosted system, and diorite represents part of the volcanic package in this area, but it's the intrusive equivalent. And it's often the type upper, higher up where we'd see sometimes the diorite, we'd see the shearing kind of um, shearing around the diorite or mineralizing near the contacts with some sometimes narrow intersections of mineralization. So down here at depth, we see this, it looks like the entire diorite over that 15-meter drilled width is mineralized, and it averages about 4.7 grams with that higher grade core that you just mentioned on the opening over about 8 meters width. So it's very encouraging. It blows the system really wide open for expansion at depth, and it's a strong indication that this is an orogenic gold system that's got real depth potential. We've now tracked vertically from an above sea level perspective. We've tracked this gold system for 1.1 meters, 1.1 kilometers vertically, and 1.5 kilometers north-south, northwest and southeast. So it's a pretty significant mineralizing system. And this demonstrates good grade over width with the kind of grades that you'd want to have for underground mining, because this is a deeper intersection, so it's not likely to be caught up in any open pit component, and is what we'd want to have for a future of this operation that demonstrates a long potential for a long-lived type orogenic gold system.
So yeah, this is a fascinating hole to me because it's the deepest one you've drilled so far at the property. And you drilled it to about 650 meters down hole. I'm not sure what the vertical extent is, but it's got to be close to that because it was a pretty steep hole. So you intercepted the Imperial Zone, which was known. You basically got the down dip extension of it there at about 450 meters um, down, or sorry, 400 meters down hole, and then you
Yeah.
extended it probably to 450 meters, and then you found this. You kept going in the hole, and you tagged into this lower Imperial Zone. And it's very interesting to me because you intercepted about 2 grams gold at 564 meters down hole, and you stayed in that for about five meters, and then you tagged into this deeper zone that's about 15 meters thick in total, that averages about 4.5 grams on average, with the higher grade section that's almost an ounce of gold at 615 meters down hole. So it's very interesting to see multiple gold intervals there in that new lower Imperial Zone. So in the section map, you show this is a pretty thick zone there at depth. So, what does that tell you to see such a thick interval of gold and then that higher grade portion that's grading almost an ounce?
Yeah, the on our section we kind of encompass an area which we call the lower Imperial Zone, and shown in the red outline, I think is what you're referring to, and that encompasses multiple kind of diorites in there. So essentially, what we've got are two significant zones. One's the Imperial at the top, at the intersection near the Royal Shear Fault, and then down around 608.3 meters, we intersect this 15-meter zone of 4.5 grams or so. Within it, there's a 7 grams over 8 meters, and then within that 7 grams over 8 meters is a higher grade core of 28 grams over 1.7 meters. So that lower zone of the 15 meters is totally within diorite. And then we have these other six mineralized zones that are between that and the Imperial Zone. Two of them are marked on the section, but there's six in there. Often those are associated with other diorites that are in the area. What's significant about the deep diorite is that that one's fully mineralized over its pretty much the full interval of the diorite, whereas often these shears, if they develop within that package between Imperial and lower Imperial, often favored and will sometimes be next to diorite intrusives. So it's the story is sounding a little complicated, but essentially the diorite and mafic volcanic package, they're all part of the same age of rock package. The diorite is just sort of the intrusive equivalent of that mafic volcanic. So it's actually tends to be a little bit more solid rock, so it doesn't shear up as easily as the mafic volcanic. And but in this case, at depth, we have this sort of crackle, breccia, and veinlet system that looks like it encompasses the whole diorite in that area. And that's pretty encouraging because it gives you the potential for these diorites throughout the package to host decent grade over width, and highlight the potential that perhaps we didn't drill deep enough at some of those upper higher holes as well. We've seen sniffs at Eagle and Diplomat of gold associated with these diorites, but typically they're shears that um, deviate around that diorite because it's a tougher rock and doesn't shear as easily. Um, but down here, what's significant is the mineralizing width of that diorite over the full width of that diorite zone. So it just highlights that we've got a gold system that consistently, even at near surface, we see an envelope of 80 to 100 meter wide envelope where you get gold hits. uh, Imperial Zone and Eagle are often near that Royal Shear Fault that's shown on the cross section, even up at Eagle, which is 800 meters or more, and probably 900 meters away from this intersection. So those intersections are are just indicating a very strong mineralizing system, and we've opened it up significantly at depth, demonstrating that there's potential for a lot of different hosts from mineralization over that 80 to 100 meter wide envelope that we've intersected about. In this case, it's about 200 meters wide at depth in that package below Imperial is where we found it. Where typically when we were hitting these other zones, they were a little closer to the Royal Shear Fault.
You said something interesting there that I picked up on. So maybe like in some of the other deeper holes at Imperial, you may not have drilled deep enough though. So yeah, they were deeper holes where you may have drilled 400 meters deep, but maybe if you had drilled 500 or 600 meters, you would have picked up on this, lower Imperial Zone, structure. Is that right?
Yeah, what I was referring to is some of the higher holes. If you look at that cross section, you'll see that some of those higher holes in that cross section never were pushed to the same depth, 200 meters below the Royal Shear Fault, like
Mm,
these holes were. And so perhaps uh, that's an area that should have been tested um, better in historic drilling, both by ourselves and this Imperial Zone had some old drilling done, but it was always very focused at this Imperial Zone area. So this just demonstrates the potential. We never saw the highlight potential of that footwall in and around Imperial, but we did test it a little further to the northwest, and that's where we got the Diplomat Zone. The Diplomat Zone had gold in that footwall associated with diorites in a roughly similar situation to what we're seeing here at this deep lower Imperial Zone. So it does indicate that there is potential over a big envelope in there that's really largely untested because we've had a tendency to test below the Royal Shear Fault and but don't go typically more than 80 to 100 meters deep below that contact. In this case, this is almost 200 meters further down below that contact. So it just highlights the potential that perhaps some of our upper holes and mid-level holes weren't drilled deep enough. And it does open up this potential for that system to develop up closer to surface, but we've seen no indication of it coming out on surface. So this could just be a whole new system developing at depth, which is good, right? When you're in orogenic gold systems, mineralizing events can favor several different structures and jump around between those structures when they're being in these orogenic type gold systems.
so it really opens up the scale potential at depth, and in terms of the fact that you might have multiple parallel structures, and that this is a new zone that appears to be parallel to the Imperial Zone at depth. So you could trace it, uh, uh, you know, a bit, further to surface, and you could, extend it at depth. Is that right?
That's right. That lower Imperial Zone is open in all directions, up dip, down dip, and along strike. It's really been untested largely.
And
Uh,
how many holes do you need to put into a new zone to really get a good understanding of the, dip?
well, we've done enough drilling to understand the approximate dip direction of these structures. We're pretty comfortable with that. It's it's identifying the plunge of the chutes within those structures that because we're dealing with such a large system, we don't really have a solid handle on the plunge of those chutes. We suspect if you look at that vertical longitudinal projection, they could have there could be developing a shallow plunge off to the right or to the southeast uh, with these big chutes. But we're like the blind man and the elephant at this point. We still don't have enough drill holes in there to really have a high confidence level on what those larger chutes at Eagle and Imperial are doing. But there is a suggestion that they could be plunging off to the southeast. So.
Hmm. I heard you mention the possibility of a resource being put on the project in 2025. I'm not sure if that is a plan for sure that's set in stone. Does this new discovery uh, at depth at the Imperial Zone, does that maybe change that hold on, we don't know the full extent of all these different gold zones, and we need to do more drilling in 2025?
Well, this is the kind of project that you'll never have enough drilling on it. Our goal is to enter all the information we've got now that we've completed the information, get our database up to date, and start looking at it with the goal of developing a resource and saying, have we achieved our minimum kind of threshold? Our threshold is hopefully demonstrate easily that this system's broken 1 million ounce potential. And we don't have the hard numbers in hand to be able to be comfortable to say that at the present time. But we've drilled now with all the RC and diamond drill holes. We're getting close to 190 holes on this project, and so but they're fairly wide spaced. All of our drilling this year was meant to step out and grow the system. For instance, stepping out at Imperial here, 185 meters, um, and 300 meters from that lower crown discovery, which is in the same relative position as the Imperial Zone. So that's demonstrating big wide step outs, but you'll have a hard time getting a professional geologist to say that they're that those drill intersections will all be one consistent mineralized zone. We have a pretty high confidence that they are because over 70% of our drill holes have ore grade type intersections in them. So that statistic alone suggests that there's a high likelihood that there's continuity, but you need to have the proof of the drilling to do it. So if we were able to ever do a resource at this point, it would be the lowest quality of resource because of the wide space nature of what we've got here. And but that's fine. You know, when you're exploring these kind of gold systems, your goal is to see, is this system big? And then you step back and fill in the holes to deliver a mineable type resource later on, right? So.
So I mean it is pretty big. We're still talking about a strike extent of over 1,500 meters, and now the vertical extent is over 1,000. Is that correct?
Well, what I say is the mineralizing interval is 1.1 kilometers vertically. So, and that takes an intersection that's up the hill to the southeast to the deepest intersection we have under Imperial in this hole. That gives a vertical extent of 1.1 kilometers. In an envelope below surface, that's probably encompassed in an envelope below surface of 400 meters below surface. So, uh, so when I say 1.1 meters vertical, I'm saying this is an orogenic gold system that's definitely demonstrated its potential to be mineralized over 1.1 meters, 1.1 kilometers of vertical extent. But physically below surface, our holes are no deeper than 400 meters below surface. So there's still lots of room to open this system up with deep drilling up the hill and that open the system up at depth. So.
You know, something that really stands out about endurance and the drill program since 2021 is your hit rate. I mean, it's like 70%, hit rate, or actually more than 70%, I think it might be. Uh, you've been around quite a while, Robert. Have you ever seen a gold project with this kind of, hit rate?
Well, every gold project's unique, but I've worked on a few orogenic type gold systems in the past and studied others in the past, and um, we have a tendency to feel that if you look at the dome ore body, for instance, 25%, 25% of intersections when you drill in the dome mine in Timmins, Ontario, I think was one of the classic papers that was written on that. Only 25% of those holes would have ore intersections in them. So we're counting, based on all of our drilling, about 70% of our holes have hit over this wide spacing. And we don't count an intersection unless it's mineralized at least over a full 3 meter width or wider. So that gives us comfort that, yeah, this is a pretty good hit statistic for an orogenic gold system and is an indication of the strength of that system. And remember that that's roughly over 10 gram meters, and we don't count it unless it's at least 3 meter hit in there. But then we've also got over 20, probably getting close to 20 holes, maybe 18 to 20 holes that have better than 50 gram meter hits. So, and several in there that have over 100 gram meter hits. So when you start looking at all those statistics, they're pretty impressive. And indicate a strong mineralizing system for wide space drilling like we've got so far. So we're very encouraged. uh, by the drilling statistics we've had, and they've been holding up even though we started to step out and try to open the system up this year and what we got able to drill last year.
So, you have 10 holes pending assays still. I think most of these holes were drilled in that gap zone between Crown and Imperial. Uh, when do you think assays from those? And what kind of results do you think we should expect?
Well, we've got 10 holes that show on that longitudinal as the white dots. Several of those are in the Eagle Zone, and those were holes that we were drilling to help uh, increase the quality of the database required for doing some resource calculation in the Eagle Zone. So some of those were repeating or filling in gaps or repeating RC holes, which sometimes a professional geo might have concerns about putting an RC hole in a resource calculation.
Hmm.
And then also filling in gaps that were untested by either RC or diamond drilling. So we expect some encouragement out of those holes up there. And then we also had some other holes in the upper crown area that were testing gaps in there. And those those are holes that will all still have to be reported at some point. We expect some good intersections to come. We expect some good intersections to come out of that Eagle Zone drilling. And then we also probe to the northwest to see if the system's still open there. So we did a big 600 meter step out or something to the northwest just to drill part of the structure up there and understand the structure. So that was just a probe type step out hole. So we need to fill in those, and we want to provide some updates too, coming up on some of our surface work we've done on the project this year, and what that's delivered to us in terms of encouragement. And we think in light of we've had several people expressing interest in uh, providing some update on what's our antimony content like and things like that because
I
of
was going to ask
the
you about the
populous.
antimony.
Yeah, so you and I have talked about this before, and that this is a gold project, and we've really focused on the rock value of gold. And so we want to try and provide some sort of update to investors on what is it that we found this year and together in terms of the antimony content and what can they expect from the project. The key has to be focused on recovering of the gold, and we see antimony as a byproduct of what we're doing here. It doesn't, in large degree, anything we've looked at, it doesn't drive the rock value of any of our intersections.
Mhm. Stibnite, yes. It's
And that's our
topical
main
now.
mineral, which is the right kind of mineral to have, we're comfortable saying. You can have stibnite come in or you can have antimony come in all kinds of minerals, but stibnite is the simple antimony sulfide. So, and that's the one that
Yeah, it's the
market
highest
seems
grade
to like.
antimony sulfide, right?
Uh, that I can't say
Okay.
for sure, but it's the most marketable. I'll put
It's
it
the
that
most
way.
marketable one, right?
Yeah, right. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. Well, a strong finish to the year for Endurance Gold, Robert. I appreciate the update, and I look forward to another update in January with the rest of the assays, and then obviously some plans for 2025. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Robert. Okay. Take care.
Sure.